Hello everyone, and welcome back to Occult Perspectives. Actually, right before I started this video, I just saw a cardinal back here in these woods, and I don't really see cardinal back here that often, so that was rather significant, I think. So, always trying to pay attention to what nature's trying to say. So, if you are new to this channel, what I do on here is I talk about different esoteric research subjects, such as Kabbalah, Freemasonry, ceremonial magic, etc. We discuss them, kind of break down the ideas, and I teach you how to use them in a practical way. And I pull from a plethora of different resources. So I'm a person who's read a lot, but I've also practiced myself as well for quite a few years now, since 2016. As far as, rituals such as the ritual of the Pentagram, which is actually what I want to get into in this video. I've been wanting to make this video for a long time because I think there's a lot of demand for information on the lesser invoking ritual of the Pentagram. There's a lot of stuff out there about the LBRP, the lesser banishing ritual of the Pentagram. And even, Israel Regardie, who wrote the Golden Dawn book, and Donald Michael Craig in Modern Magic, those two don't really cover the lesser invoking ritual of the Pentagram, which is just as important, if not more important, in my opinion. So what I want to do in this video is I want to kind of break down, the difference between the two, and really go through the whole process of teaching you how to do the lesser invoking ritual of the Pentagram in both its traditional aspect, or more Golden Dawn Western ceremonial magic tradition, which it is the same ritual, but I have changed the traditional elemental directions. So that's really the only difference between, my version, the one that I've practiced for a couple years now. I used to do it the traditional way, but we'll get into all that very soon. So the LBRP, the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, this is like the prerequisite in Western ceremonial magic for pretty much all other workings. It's kind of, the ground working, that foundational exercise, which you then build upon, layers upon, essentially. And I've been doing that operation since 2016. And I probably stopped doing it for the most part about 2 years ago. I'll still do it every now and again, but I'll kind of get into and explain why I don't do it, all the time anymore. So the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram is essentially when you are tracing the pentagram in the four quarters. When you are banishing, you are pushing. It's a banishing earth pentagram. So you're taking the energy from Malkuth and you are pushing up the pentagram towards Kether. You're pushing the energy back up to source, essentially. You're banishing unwanted energies, you're cleansing your space. And essentially what this does, from my perspective, the LBRP, is it kind of creates this blank, a clean slate, or a blank template, to work with, essentially. So it's almost like a magic eraser, so to speak, which kind of scrubs you down and cleanses your area. Not only does it internally cleanse you, but it also cleanses your area, and creates like a clean slate, essentially. And so by separating, your psyche or the elements into these parts, you're able to kind of compartmentalize them into the four quarters and then work with them in that way. And the archangels, invoking them, you do invoke, even though it's a banishing ritual. You invoke the four archangels in the four directions to kind of act as guardians over those four quarters to help make sure that the energy is, banished. You're clearing the space. And when you do the banishing, you do the sign of silence also with, the left finger. Not every book teaches that. Some people do not add the sign of silence. I'm not sure why, because it makes a lot more sense when you're banishing the energies away to kind of seal that, you know, with an extra layer or an extra movement. That's just kind of my opinion on it though. So that's essentially, in a nutshell, kind of what the LBRP is. It's a lot more than that, what I just described. It has a lot more components to it, and it does a lot of other things. But that ritual, it's pretty easily researchable. You know, you can look up things. I recommend reading Israel Regardie's The Middle Pillar book. He really goes into, you know, the details of the LBRP. But Israel Regardie seems to be all about banishing energies. You know, he really focuses around banishing. Now in the Golden Dawn book, it says when you're starting out to invoke in the morning and then banish at night, which I do see that, the benefit of that, of course. And I think in the beginning, it's okay if you just do the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. That's fine. But eventually, very soon, you're going to want to add the invoking. And then as you move along in your spiritual progress, there's going to be energies that you're not going to want to banish all the time. You need to take some of the energies in and let them run through you so you can integrate them into your psyche, you know, in your spiritual body. So that's where invoking can kind of help you. You're not always trying to create a blank slate all the time. Now, I think the two are very powerful in combination. So if you were to do, say, an LBRP and then an LIRP, I think that's really good for removing all the negative things and creating that, you know, that clear space, that kind of, that blank template we were talking about, working from square one. It allows you to get rid of certain negative energies. And then after you do that, you do the invoking so that you can pull in all the divine energy you need. So some people say you always want to end all of your practices with an LBRP, but the only problem with that I see is that it clears all the energy that you've built up, essentially. So, I mean, these are just some of my thoughts on all of it. None of this is dogma, of course, and I'm not telling you what's right or what's wrong to do. Everybody's going to be different, you know, so it's really just nuanced for every single person, in my opinion, and everybody's going to have a different, you know, experience with it. But yeah, in the beginning, it was hard for me to find information on the LBRP. I'm sorry, on the LIRP, the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram, and all I pretty much found information on was the LBRP. So I exclusively did, you know, the LBRP, and then I would do a middle pillar a lot of the time. And then I started getting into the lesser hexagram ritual and like the LVX, but that was around the same time I had kind of learned about the lesser invoking ritual as well. So I was kind of implementing all of them at a certain point. But in the beginning, I'd say for like the first 3 years, maybe even 4 years or more that I practiced, I was pretty much only doing the LBRP, and I wasn't always doing the middle pillar with it. So it was a lot of banishing, a lot of clearing the energies, and just kind of always keeping that purified space, that empty space. But as I've explained, I have a video entitled The Dangers of the LBRP, with a question mark, I'm pretty sure, because there's no real danger to it. It's just, you remember these things are just different in their functionalities and how they function. And so the LBRP, oh my gosh, these spider webs. It's like the first one I really have run into. I've been trying to keep an eye out for them and swat them with this stick, because even on the trail, there are a lot of spider webs. They kind of made me lose my place there for a second. We were talking about how the LBRP, the information's a lot more readily available. So I was practicing that, you know, almost exclusively alongside the middle pillar for probably the first 3 to 4 years, you know, and not doing lesser invoking rituals of the pentagram because I didn't know how. So if you have found this video, you know, hopefully you found the information that you needed by, you know, by now for the invoking, because there are a lot more videos out there now, and there is more information, but it's still kind of lacking in comparison to the LBRP. So a book that I highly recommend, you know, is Damien Eccles' Angels and Archangels, and he talks about both in that book, the banishing and the invoking, which I think all authors should have been doing from the get-go. So we talked about some of the effects of the LBRP. Now let's talk about the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram. So instead of pushing energies away, pushing negative energies away and banishing them to clear the space, you are drawing energies in, you're pulling energies in. It's actually having more of a, I would say more of a magnetic effect that way, because you're drawing the energy in rather than the outward pushing, you know, energy that you would use during the LBRP. So the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram is essentially a way to pull the energy down from Kether. When you're invoking, you're pulling that energy down to the material plane. So instead of pushing energy back to the divine, you're bringing energy from the divine down here to the material realm, to Malkuth. So in its functionality, you're essentially working with those aspects of the cosmos that are more angelic or positively polarized in nature, and you're pulling them down essentially into your own energetic space or your own energetic field, and kind of, you know, merging yourself with them, working with the elements, you know, each angel representing an element, and of course the elements, oh, these spider webs, these elements representing different aspects of self. So when you're working with Michael, and remember, you can invoke just one archangel in all directions if you want to, and above and below. You don't have to do the traditional, you know, invoking four archangels and then Metatron and Sandalphon. You can just do all Gabriel if you need to work with, say, emotional healing. If you want to work with aspects of willpower, things of that nature, the fire element, you know, you could work with primarily Michael. And this is really powerful when you're doing the invoking. So the element of fire in Archangel Michael is willpower, drive. Gabriel's going to be more of the emotions, water, of course. Raphael is air and the intellect. And then Uriel is things pertaining to the physical world or the five senses, the element of earth. So yeah, I think that that's about as clear and concise as I can explain the process, or I'm sorry, yeah, what's actually energetically taking place when you're doing an invoking ritual of the pentagram. You're bringing those as above energies, the cosmic positive forces or the archangelic forces, and you're channeling them down into your own energetic field through the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram. And so basically bringing divine energy into your own energy field, just to basically sum it all up. So now let's go through the actual process of doing it. So, you know, traditionally you'll do the Kabbalistic cross. And I'm sure, you know, if you're watching this video, you probably already know how to do the Kabbalistic cross. It alone is a very powerful tool. And it's connecting you with the above and the below, you know. And I don't have a good way of showing you how I would perform the whole Kabbalistic cross as of right this moment. But if you do want to check out my Patreon, the $5 tier, you actually get access to a video of me, and in that I perform the Kabbalistic cross. Well, the relaxation ritual first, I take you through that, the Kabbalistic cross, and then the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram. But I also wanted to make this video, make a public video, you know, about how to go through the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram. I'm just not actually going to go through all the physical movements. I'm just going to tell you instead and just show you certain things where I need to. So you do the Kabbalistic cross. I also have a video entitled Advanced Kabbalistic Cross and Middle Pillar. So if you want to go and check that out, not only do I, when I'm doing the Kabbalistic cross, I move my way up the tree of life. So as I see my body, the part of that ritual where you're seeing your body rise above the city, you know, above the state, above the country, above the world, at that particular time, you keep rising and rising, and you ascend through the planets first. So above Earth, above the moon, you know, Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and then the constellations. And then I see each of those spheres where you're actually moving through the Sephirothic spheres. So I move through the planets on the physical level, and then I move up through Yesod, the astral plane, up through Hod, the plane of the intellect, through Netzach, which is the emotional sphere. It's said to be the realm of the Fae, Damien Eccles says. Moving through to Parith, the realm of the sun god's solar energy. Up to Geburah, fire, you know, the willpower, severity. Hesed, across the abyss, across Da'at, up to Binah and Hokmah, and then connecting to Kether, and then connecting to the Ein Sof, or the limitless all, and then the Ein Sof, the limitless, or I'm sorry, the Ein Sof, or is the limitless light. And then the Ein Sof is the limitless all, which I usually see personified as a giant, almost like a dragon, kind of as described in the Kabbalion. And from it emanates the Ein Sof, or the limitless light. So the dragon is the Ein Sof, and then the Ein is just that pure potentiality. It's the no thing, but really what it is it's limitless potential. In its purest form, it's unseparated. There is no division. So it's otherwise or mistakenly known as the no thing, but it's the key, and the paradox is that it's no thing, but it's everything. So that's just a short little rant about my advanced Kabbalistic cross, I guess we could say. So moving on to the actual content that you're waiting for. The lesser invoking ritual, the pentagram. After the Kabbalistic cross, you will traditionally face east, and you will draw an invoking pentagram. So, you know, it's down to the left, up and to the right, across, and then back down. Or I'm sorry, it's hard to do with right corner and then up. And you can look up pictures on how to draw, you know, the invoking pentagram. So you draw that the same way you would the banishing pentagram. And then the way that I do it is I do the inhalation, and then I do the sign of the Enterer, and I vibrate the sacred God name, which traditionally the one associated with the east would be, where you're starting would be Yod He Vav He. And then instead of doing the sign of silence, as I'm doing the sign of the Enterer, I just allow the energy of the pentagram, the blue flowing energy, to come into my own aura. Instead of pushing the energy away, I'm bringing the energy into my being, if that makes sense. So that's one of the big differences between the LIRP and the LBRP for myself. So then you're at that pentagram, and then you move to the right, always moving in a clockwise fashion, especially if you're doing any kind of invoking. Now, I've heard that some banishings do counterclockwise, so I've often wondered why the banishing ritual of the pentagram, if it's truly for banishing, why is it not done in a counterclockwise fashion? It's still always done in a clockwise fashion. Now, I think the reason for this is because each quarter represents a different season. So if you're starting in the east, you're starting in spring, the south is summer, the west is fall, and then the north would symbolize winter. So you're moving your way around the 4 seasons. So as you are in the, so you move from the east to the south, do your invoking pentagram once again, and then do the sign of the Enterer once again, And of course, in the south, it's Adonai traditionally. You vibrate that God name, move to the... See, I do it differently now, so I have to think about what the traditional method is that I used to do. I have to think about it a little bit more consciously now. So moving from the south to the west, you do another invoking pentagram, and then it's A, Hey, Yay. Then you move to the north, tracing that line around, do another invoking pentagram, do the sign of the Enterer, no sign of silence, you know, you're soaking in the energy, and then you vibrate Agla. You trace the circle back to the east, you stand in the middle facing the east, just like the LBRP, and the rest of the ceremony is exactly the same as the LBRP. So congratulations, you now know how to do the invoking ritual of the pentagram. So, and there is a video, I forget what the video is entitled, but it actually says that the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram was meant to be the main ritual, and then the LBRP is more of an afterthought. I think these come from older Golden Dawn documents, and I thought that was really interesting. I forget what that video is entitled, but if I do find it again, I can put it in the comments at some point. So yeah, the banishing was used just more as a precautionary, or sometimes used, and they emphasized, I guess originally more the LIRP over the LBRP. Very interesting, because from today's lens, it's all about banishing and cleansing the space and clearing negativity, etc., which isn't a bad thing, especially when you're first getting into spirituality. But at some point, you're going to want to learn how to work with some of these energies instead of always using banishing and cleansing as an escapism, you know, because it can become that after a while, and that's kind of what happened with me. There were certain things I just didn't want to face, or I didn't like the way that it was manifesting. So instead of just facing it and doing what had to be done, I would do an LBRP to just kind of push the energy away. But it would seem to always have a way of coming back, you know, and this isn't really a healthy way to approach the LBRP anyway, or any of these rituals. It's more of an internal working that's going on. So if there's something in life that you need to deal with, you know, you should just, of course, deal with it. And then these rituals can be a tool, so to strengthen your mind so that you can actually take on, you know, whatever it is that you need to do. So now I guess I pretty much explained everything I needed to when it comes to the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram. But I will go ahead and explain the way that I do it now and why I do it that way. Now the LBRP, I still face the east when I'm doing that. Now when I do the invoking, I have faced the west. I face the west now when I invoke. So I had found information that it might be the case that the elements are in different positions. So I've started working with them in this way. I don't know if this is actually the correct way. You know, Curtis Joseph, I was in a live chat with him once, you know, he was doing his live stream, and I asked a question. I said, you know, are the elemental directions like super important? You know, should we get like really caught up on, you know, what's right and what's wrong? And he said, no, it's, you know, it's more about what works for you. It's like if the north is earth, then, you know, there should be a reason that it's that. And you should know what that reason is for you. So, you know, it's really going to be whatever works best for you. I know the shamanistic directions are a little bit different. I think in traditional shamanism, the south is earth, I believe. So there's so many different systems of trying to do this stuff. You know, you don't have to just... Really, it's about working with different things and seeing what works best for you. But now I've kind of switched things up. I see the east as being fire now. So actually, I guess I have changed the elemental directions of the LBRP as well. But I'll just go ahead and get into how I do the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram now. So the LBRP is keeping these same angels and directions, elemental directions, but the difference is that I'm starting in the east when I do a banishing, and I'm starting in the west when I do invoking. So I go to the east, or I'm sorry, I go to the west, draw my invoking pentagram, and then vibrate Yod He Vav He. I now do water in the south, so do the invoking pentagram there, and then I move to the, then I move to the east. I do the tracing pentagram. I think I've gotten this backwards. It's so I start in the west. I do an invoking pentagram. It's hard for me to do it without my setup here. I have little wands that correspond with the elements. So the west is air. I do the invoking pentagram in the west and vibrate Yod He Vav He. And then, you know, Raphael will go there. Trace the pentagram over to the north and do the invoking pentagram, Agla. Trace the line of the circle to the east now, and I trace an invoking pentagram, and then I vibrate Adonai, and then I finish it up in the south, doing an invoking pentagram and vibrating Eheye, and then finishing the circle back in the west. And then the rest of the ritual proceeds as it normally would, but with Raphael being in front, Michael behind, Uriel to the right, and Gabriel to the left. Now you might be asking, you know, why would you change this up? Now I learned from a certain video that the elements work a little bit different on the higher levels or in the astral levels. Now during the LBRP and the LIRP, you are technically working with, you know, the 5 elements. More specifically, with the 4 quarters, you're working with the 4 lower elements, which are earth, air, water, and fire. And then spirit kind of comes in, you know, as you're drawing the pentagrams. But these 4 quarters, they have numerous, you know, symbolical correspondences. Sorry, that didn't want to come out right. So you have the lion for Michael. And this is the animals of Ezekiel's vision. You have the lion for Michael, the ox for Uriel, for earth, the phoenix or the eagle for Gabriel. And then for Raphael, it's usually the Aquarian man. But I sometimes envision a dragon instead for the element of air, instead of the Aquarian man. Sometimes I put both of them together, sometimes just one or the other, but I do use the dragon for air a lot as a visual with Raphael. And see, that's the thing, you can kind of change these, you can kind of tweak these things a little bit, you know, here and there. But anyway, I'm trying to think where I was leaving off at. So the reason that I switched the elements is, if you've ever watched Lord of the Rings, and I think there's some deep esoteric components to this. You know, I watched Universal Mastery's video on the East, and the East being fire. And, you know, come to think of it, you know, I can see the East being air, what it traditionally is, but also I can see the East being fire as well. It's the direction of real initiation. Like when you're working, you know, with the East, it also represents the springtime, according to, you know, the traditional way that this ritual is done. The traditional LBRP, the East would be spring, and you're working your way around the seasons that way. But the East also seems to correspond more esoterically to fire and initiation itself, and going through the alchemical process of really sometimes being burnt down, of going through that phoenix stage, you could almost say. And then the West is more the direction of kind of the soul that is moving back towards the light, or it's almost like a way of retiring in a sense after the alchemical process is taking place. But the East is apparently the direction of fire, of disintegration. So when you're constantly trying to invoke and stuff in the East, It's just not, it may not work out for you. Whereas the West is, in this system, it's considered air. So when you're invoking, you actually want to invoke from the West. This is what I've started doing. This is the change that I've started making. And the reason I brought up Lord of the Rings is if you've watched the movies, if you've read the book, the East is where Mordor lies. That's the land of fire. It's the land of trial. It's the land of tribulation. And then where do the elves go afterwards? They retire to the West. The West is kind of like, I've had some interesting, spiritual experiences with what this direction could truly mean, coming from this viewpoint of, moving back and forth between these directions. East being the place where the transfiguration takes place, where the element of fire, will reshape you, reforge you. And then the West, interestingly in the West, this is where baptisms traditionally take place. So I think that's why in the traditional LDRP system, the West corresponds with water. But now I'm using it for the element of air, and then I switch water to the south. And then earth stays in the north. So those are the differences that I've kind of, made to the system that I was previously working with. So I'm just trying to continue working with it, and every time that I do it, I like these correspondences. I think that they just hit 31, 33 in the video too. That was cool. I think these correspondences are working well for me, and there is deep I don't know why I keep trying to say. There are deep symbolical meanings to, working with the East for me and working with the West. So I see the West as kind of moving back into the land of the light. It's where the elves are going to the gray havens. They're going back to that peaceful harbor, that place of basically their haven, their heaven. So for me, symbolically, that's kind of what that's representing by working with the western direction as I'm invoking. And then when I banish, I still face the East, because according to this new system that I've started trying, the East is fire. So you're pushing the energies or banishing the energies into the fire. And then when you're invoking, you're pulling from the West or from air. Oh, I just found a little frog. I don't know if you can see him or not. Oh, there he goes. Very cool. So yeah, that's kind of my new nuanced system that I do, but you can just stick with the traditional, Golden Dawn, the traditional elemental directions if you wish. But if you're inspired by some of these concepts and ideas that I've thrown into this video, let me know what you think. Just hit 33 minutes there too. Been seeing a lot of 33. So yeah, everyone, I think that that'll pretty much sum this video up. There's a lot of information I wanted to get in here, and I think I crammed it all into here. So I will go ahead and end the video here. I guess I should have held the camera more out in front of me. This looks a little bit better, but it's a little bit more work for my arm. So, all right, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, if you got some kind of, you got anything good from it, you got any kind of value from it, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Feel free to share with like-minded people. Feel free to comment and share your opinions, and we can have discussions. I'm sure this video may get a lot of views and a lot of comments, because this is a topic that a lot of people are, I think they're seeking information on. So I hope that my unique occult perspectives has given you some value. Be sure to go and check out my Patreon too. I'll leave a link to that in the description of the video. Ring the notification bell if you want to be notified of new videos. And I think that'll wrap this up. So thank you everyone for watching. I will see you very, very soon. And until next time, peace.